Podcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to our webinar this week. My name is Tanya, and I'm the Marketing Manager over here at Struxoft Solutions. Just for those of you who are new with us today, MWF or Metal Wood Framer is our automated Revit wall, floor, ceiling, and truss framing software for light gauge steel and also wood modeling. Today's session will be led by our Senior Technician, Christina. Christina will be walking you through section and plan view options with a focus on telescopic panels, including how to create telescopic panels, review all the telescopic shop drawing specific options, and also how to specify your cut planes and clipping heights in the plan and section views. So just before we get going, I would like to remind everyone that at the end of the webinar, we'll be taking a couple of live questions. In order to be selected, please press the raise hand button on the dashboard. Just please also make sure that your mic is working correctly. If you'd prefer, you can also ask questions throughout the webinar in the questions tab of the GoToWebinar dashboard. We'll make sure to get back to you by email within 24 hours. All right, that's it for me. I'm going to hand off to Christina now.
All right, thanks, Tanya. Hey, everyone, good afternoon. So for today's webinar, I thought we'd kind of keep going with the shop drawing theme that I've done the past few weeks, and namely take a look at some specific options that we have for the plan views, for the section views, like Tanya mentioned, kind of review how our clipping options work within the software and how you can even customize it if you want on a particular sheet. And I also thought we'd do a little focus on the telescopic panel. So kind of something specific to anyone who's rolling with Howick, but I'll show how you can add that option to the panel and then some custom options that we have in the shop drawing for that. So that's what I thought we'd focus on today. So let's just get right into it. And we'll start off with the Howick Extenda panels. So for anyone who isn't aware, Howick released a little while ago this Extenda panel, which basically lets you extend either height-wise or lengthwise the panel once it's on site. So if it has to fit in a bit of a funkier spot, it literally will let you raise the stud height or actually lengthen your panel a little bit, depending on where you place this overlap, so where you place these cuts. So this is something that we can model in the software directly, and also something that you can reflect in the shop drawings. We'll have dimensions that go to exactly where this line is. So I thought we'd start off taking a look at that. So the Extenda options are basically placed with an MWF marker line. So I'll just go ahead, select my panel, throw in the marker lines. And for anyone who's not really familiar with the marker lines option, it's not just for telescopic options. It's a great way to add blocking. It's a great way to place whole series in your wall as well. So it can be used for kind of a slew of different things. But basically, I'll create both options. So I'll create lines so we'll be able to extend the panel in height as well as in length. And let's start off with creating the horizontal marker line. So we'll just turn that on. We're only going to put one line realistically with these Extenda panels. So I'm just going to put in one. And then you've got the options for the offsets. So let's do 2 feet, but from the top of the panel. So we'll get the extended part, kind of like how it reflects in the picture, closer to the top track. Then you just have to turn on your telescopic options and assign your configurations. So if you don't have any configurations yet, you just go into your Manage tab, and you'll see all the options listed here. So it's really just giving your telescopic a name. It's going to be the line type, of course. We're going to look at the horizontal, so I'll stick to that for now. And then the telescopic family in particular. So for this telescopic option, we have a Howick R stud. It's a family that comes out of the box with the software. So it's found in the C drive, directly where all of our families are. So you'll just have to load that guy in, load the sizing you're in, and it's called the R stud. So it's reflected in the family itself. After that, it's fairly simple. It's just choosing the line style you want to use. So for the marker line option, we're actually placing a Revit line. So it'll be a Revit line that's visible that you can select. And I'm just going to go with a generic wide line, but realistically on a project, it might be nice to have different line styles to reflect what you're doing. You can color code them. So it's a bit easier to see exactly what that line is going to do. And then it's just adding the extension options. So you can see here it reflects pretty easily in the picture. So you know exactly what you're getting. But it's just adding the extra extension either on the top or on the bottom. And that's what's going to give you the wiggle room that you'll actually be able to extend the panel with when you actually go ahead and roll this guy out. So I'll stick with the default 1 foot extension on the top and on the bottom. So that's exactly what I've done here with the configuration I already have. And then for the vertical line, so the line that'll technically run and cut through the tracks, so you can actually extend the panel by length. We'll just go ahead and also create a vertical marker line. And it's exactly the same steps. I'm just going to place the one, and let's do this at 2 feet from the end side. So it should place right around here. So it's the exact same options really to add in the vertical type. You just have to make sure to change your line style, of course, so that it cuts through your tracks. But other than that, it's exactly the same steps. It's the same family that we're going to use. So you'll have the telescopic family loaded in, and then it's just picking the extensions on the right and left side of that line. So now that I've got both of my configurations assigned to my line types, I'll just go ahead and say OK. And with the marker lines, it's going to populate initially with just the lines. And anyone, again, who's used the marker lines knows that you can take these lines, you can move them. So if you did want that overlap to be in a different bay, you can always shift it after the fact. They can be copy pasted, deleted, moved around. So you're free to use some Revit commands on these lines and move them exactly where you need to be. But once they're good to go, give your panel a regen, and then you'll actually be able to see how the members would overlap. And the same thing for the tracks. I'm going to have 1 foot of an overlap on either side of that line. Maybe I'll just drop this down a little bit and let's give it a refresh. There we go. So that's all there really is to creating the Howick Extenda panel in MWF. It's super simple. It's just done with these marker lines. And then once you're done with that, it will reflect in the shop drawings. So if I start off with the elevation, it's some pretty simple dimension options, but they are here with all of your other dimension styles. And it has the word telescopic in the dimension, so it'll be easy to point out and isolate those. But basically, it'll just create a dimension either in length or in height. Since we're in elevation, we'll do both. So you'll be able to get separate dimension styles on your existing views. So I'll just leave that turned on, and I'm not going to turn anything else on. I'll just leave those two dimension types. And for anyone who's maybe a bit newer to the shop drawings in general, it's super simple. Once you add in the dimension styles, if you go to your dimensions tab, they'll be here. You can specify your dimension style if you want to use a particular type. You can put in an offset, so it's not just kind of laid directly on top of your panel. But that's all there really is to setting up the dimensions. So besides the elevation, you'll have the same options in floor plans. So if you choose the floor plan view, or if you choose the reflected ceiling plan view, it'll have its own dimension styles in there. And then the other thing as well, if you're doing a section of the panel, there is the one dimension style that you can pick in the section view. So now that everything's been pretty much set up, we can go ahead and just generate the shop drawing. And it'll be pretty specific to just the Extenda panel. Let's offset those a little bit. But this is exactly how it'll come in looking. We've got separate dimensions just for the two pieces of track on your top and bottom. You can see it here in the section view. If I make my offset a little bigger, let's drag that a bit, it'll really clearly show it in the section view as well. So if you're doing this type of panel, you'll definitely need that section view. But the other nice thing to note is just with those extra family types, they are of course going to be labeled. So everything is still labeled and quantified the same way. Still just a regular BMSF label that gets placed on top of these guys. And everything is tabulated exactly the same way. So they don't have to be treated differently like any other stud. It'll all be tabulated the same way. It's just a matter of turning on the dimensions. And then we've got our nice little 3D view off to the side. So this is the first thing I wanted to cover, just to kind of go over the Extenda options and some of those specific dimension styles and how to get those set up. The next thing I wanted to cover is just a general view review on how our clipping options work for the reflected ceiling plan, for the section, and for the floor plan. So I'll go ahead and just specify my shop drawing settings. Let's just turn some things back on. So if I go into my elevation, turn these guys off. And let's do the same thing for the section view. Reflected ceiling plan, I think I also had turned on. And let's also do the floor plan. So I'm just going to go ahead and re-add my reflected ceiling plan back to my shop drawing zones here. And let's go ahead and generate this guy. Okay, so one thing that I want to highlight is obviously with our shop drawing settings, depending on where the clipping is and basically where your section view is being created, it is obviously a global setting that you're creating in your shop drawings. So I thought it would be worth it to show how you can actually change that section view. And a good example is in this particular panel, if you do have like a smaller opening closer to the tracks, then if you did want to cut the view and have it visible, just maybe in one particular wall, you can always turn those on. So a good example, if I just go into my basic floor plan view, I'm just going to go ahead and show my crop region. So it's visible. And then you also just have to go ahead and turn on the scales or hide scales that are coarser than. And I just turn that to something ridiculous like 1 to 400. And basically what this does is if you go into the elevation view and activate that and go to your red view, you'll actually be able to see the section that coordinates with this view. So it's a little two-step process just to turn this guy on and make him visible. Just make sure in the plan again to turn on your crop region so you can see that it's visible and see which view it's associated to. And then also just to hide your scales so that the section view comes in. The scale in particular is just a little measure that we take so you don't see that section view reflected elsewhere in your project. So if you're just doing it for like a quick little one-off change, it's completely fine to show exactly where that's populated. So let's just jump into the floor plan. And something I just want to clarify as well. I know it can be a little confusing on how we word things in the shop drawing settings sometimes, but whenever you're dealing with our kind of section views and our floor plans, the cut plane is obviously where we're placing that view, so where it's cutting along the panel. But the clipping height is always taken in reference to the very bottom of the panel. So you can see here it's just cutting it at 310, and then my clipping plane is 0 because my view is actually extending all the way to the bottom of the panel. So that's where my view depth goes down to. So like I mentioned, these are obviously very global settings. So if you did want to change this globally for all of your shop drawings, you can. But maybe in this particular view, I just want to move it so that it cuts my second opening up here for this particular panel. It's not something I want to show all the time. I can adjust my depth manually. I can move my detail view. And then that'll reflect in my floor plan. Let's turn off the view templates. Maybe make that a little bit more visible. But that's just a general option that you can do. And you can do this with all of our views. So let's show the crop region. And let's put the scale all the way down. And when you come in the red view, you'll see the other detail for that view. So this guy here is the reflected ceiling plan option. So the RCP. And again, I know it's a little confusing, but it works in the same way as our floor plan does. So my cut plane for this particular guy is at 5 feet, so it's about at the midpoint, but my clipping is at 11 feet. So in reference to the bottom of the panel, the depth is going up and cutting at the 11-foot mark. So that's what my view depth is. And same type of deal, I can do it for my section view as well. Turn on the crop, and then I could always go ahead and adjust it in my elevation view. So this one, particularly handy if you wanted to show maybe a header and you wanted to manually change it. You could always turn on the section and then adjust the depth. Or move it entirely as well. So that's going to be it for me today, guys. Just a quick little overview on how some of our plan views work. So I hope some of you found this helpful. And like Tanya mentioned, if there are any questions, feel free to go ahead and ask them now.
Thank you, Christina. I'd just like to remind everyone that if you'd like to pose a question live, please raise your hand now by clicking on the hand icon in the control panel. Just please also make sure that your audio is working correctly. And just while we wait for any questions to come through, the full recording of this webinar will be sent through tomorrow. As always, please feel free to share this recording with any colleagues. And if you would like a follow-up, or you have a follow-up question, or you'd like to set up a one-on-one demonstration, we highly encourage you to reach out to our team. Contact details for our contact details will be available with the recording. All right, I'm just going to give it a couple seconds and see if there's any hands that were raised. Alrighty, that looks like that's a wrap for today then. So as I just mentioned, for any questions that may come up after the session has closed, please feel free to email us. Our contact details will be provided along with the recording tomorrow. All right, that's it for us. We'll now be ending the webinar. Just want to say a quick thank you to Christina, and also thank you to everyone who registered. Have a great day.